Imagine an empire so powerful that it rivaled Egypt and Babylon. Yet today, most people have never even heard its name. The Hittites, an ancient superpower that dominated the heart of the Middle East, controlled vast trade routes, and mastered weapons of iron at a time when the world still fought with bronze. They signed the first known peace treaty in human history. They defeated mighty armies. They ruled for centuries. And then, they vanished, completely erased from history. No legends, no myths, nothing but ruins buried under the sands of time. How could a civilization so advanced disappear so completely? Was it war? Was it famine? Or something even more mysterious? In this video, we'll uncover the rise and fall of the Hittites, the forgotten empire that shaped the ancient world and then faded into oblivion. But first, let's start with the mystery. This is the story of the Hittites, the superpower erased from history. To understand the Hittites, we need to travel back over 3,000 years to a time when the ancient world was ruled by great empires. In the 17th century BCE, deep in the rugged mountains of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey, a powerful new civilization began to rise. They called themselves the Hittites. Unlike the Egyptians who thrived along the Nile, or the Babylonians in Mesopotamia, the Hittites built their empire on high plateaus, fortified by natural barriers of rock and forest. This was a land of extremes, harsh winters, fertile valleys, and strategic mountain passes. The Hittites were not a people of myth. They were Indo-European in origin, speaking a language that would one day connect to many modern tongues. And in the heart of their empire stood their mighty capital, Hattusa. This city, carved into stone, became a symbol of power and order. From roughly 1600 BCE to 1178 BCE, the Hittite Empire dominated the ancient Near East. At its height, their lands stretched from central Anatolia through northern Syria, touching the edges of Mesopotamia and brushing against the Mediterranean coast. What made them so significant? First, their location. They sat at the crossroads of Asia and Europe, controlling vital trade routes for metals, horses, and grain. Second, their military strength. While other empires relied on bronze, the Hittites were among the first to master iron, a metal that would change warfare forever. With their iron weapons, fast-moving chariots, and disciplined armies, they became a force feared by their rivals. Even Egypt, the powerhouse of the ancient world, saw the Hittites as equals. Their rivalry with the pharaohs would shape the politics of an entire era. But the Hittites weren't just warriors. They were lawmakers, diplomats, and engineers. In a world where kings ruled by divine command, the Hittites created a legal system that balanced power between rulers and nobles, a system far ahead of its time. They absorbed ideas from Mesopotamia and Syria, blending cultures into something uniquely their own. And for a moment in history, they stood as one of the greatest empires the world had ever seen. Yet today, their name barely appears in schoolbooks. How did a superpower so advanced become nearly forgotten? To answer that, we must first explore how they rose to such heights and why their story matters. The Hittites did not become an empire overnight. For centuries, they fought, negotiated, and expanded their influence across Anatolia. But their true rise came under a name that echoed like thunder in the ancient world, Superpower I. Superpower I was not just a king. He was a conqueror, a strategist, and the architect of Hittite power. Under his rule, the empire transformed from a regional kingdom into a superpower. His strategy? Speed, innovation, and iron. At a time when most armies still wielded bronze, the Hittites mastered iron weapons, stronger, sharper, and more durable than anything their enemies carried. With iron swords, spears, and armor, they gained an edge that changed the balance of power. But iron alone didn't win wars. The Hittites perfected the art of chariot warfare. Their chariots were lighter, faster, and could carry 3 warriors instead of 2, a driver, a shield bearer, and an archer. This combination made them a deadly force on open plains. Superpower unleashed this military machine against his rivals. He crushed the Mitanni kingdom in northern Syria, seizing their cities and trade routes. With each victory, the Hittite borders expanded, and their wealth grew. Control of Syria gave the Hittites dominance over vital trade corridors linking Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and Egypt. It also brought them face to face with another giant of the ancient world, the Pharaoh of Egypt. The Egyptians were masters of diplomacy and war, but even they recognized the strength of the Hittites. These two powers would clash in one of history's most legendary battles, a confrontation that would shape the fate of the ancient Near East. For now, know this: by the end of Suppiluliuma's reign, the Hittite Empire stretched from the mountains of Anatolia to the borders of Mesopotamia, touching the Mediterranean coast. They were no longer a rising power, they were a dominant force. But with great power comes greater challenges. The wars were far from over, and the rivalry with Egypt was only beginning. At the height of its power, the Hittite Empire wasn't just a war machine. It was a center of law, diplomacy, and innovation. One of their most remarkable achievements was diplomacy. In an age when kingdoms solved disputes with swords, the Hittites signed the world's first known peace treaty, the Treaty of Kadesh. This treaty, carved into stone and written in cuneiform, ended a brutal conflict with none other than Egypt, the superpower of the Nile. It wasn't just words, it was a historic moment. Two mighty empires, once sworn enemies, agreed to peace and even exchanged royal marriages to seal the alliance. But their brilliance didn't stop at diplomacy. The Hittites created an advanced legal system for their time. Unlike the harsh laws of Mesopotamia that demanded brutal punishments, Hittite law was surprisingly progressive. For many crimes, fines replaced executions. Property rights were clearly defined. Contracts were enforced. It was a system built not on fear, but on order. Their administration was equally impressive. Hittite kings ruled with councils of nobles, balancing power in a way rare for the ancient world. And their scribes preserved every detail on clay tablets, laws, treaties, even personal letters. These archives, buried for centuries, became the key to rediscovering their lost civilization. Culturally, the Hittites were masters of adaptation. They absorbed Mesopotamian gods, Syrian art, and Anatolian traditions, blending them into something uniquely Hittite. Their cities echoed with temples, palaces, and massive stone gates adorned with lions and sphinxes, a sign of their grandeur. For a time, the Hittites were not only feared, they were respected, even admired. They stood as mediators in ancient politics, shaping an era of fragile balance between empires. But even golden ages cannot last forever. Storm clouds were gathering on the horizon, storms that would one day erase the Hittites from history. And then, they vanished. For centuries, the Hittites had dominated the ancient Near East. They commanded vast lands, signed treaties with pharaohs, and built cities of stone that seemed eternal. And yet, within a single generation, they were gone. No chronicler wrote their final chapter. No poet sang of their fall. For nearly 3,000 years, their name disappeared from history. So what happened? To answer that, we must look at one of history's greatest mysteries, the late Bronze Age collapse. Around 1200 BCE, the ancient world was plunged into chaos. Entire civilizations, from Greece to Mesopotamia, crumbled almost overnight. Trade networks collapsed, cities burned, and kingdoms that had stood for centuries vanished. The Hittite Empire was one of its most tragic victims. Why? Historians point to several possible causes, but none with certainty. Tone shifts to investigative. First, the Sea Peoples. Mysterious raiders who appeared like a storm from the Mediterranean. They attacked Egypt, the Levant, and the coasts of Anatolia. Some believe they struck the Hittite trade routes, cutting off vital resources. Others argue they invaded the heartland, leaving fire and ruin in their wake. Second, famine. Ancient letters, found in the ruins of Hattusa, tell of desperate times. Kings pleading for grain, harvests failing, and hunger stalking the land. Climate change may have played a deadly role, turning fertile valleys into dust. Third, internal rebellion. As resources dwindled, the empire strained under its own weight. Local governors may have turned against the crown, fragmenting the state from within. And then there's the destruction of Hattusa, the mighty Hittite capital. Archaeologists found layers of ash, charred timbers, and shattered walls. The city was burned, abandoned, and never rebuilt. Who set it ablaze? Was it invaders? Rebels? Or a desperate act by the Hittites themselves to deny their enemies a prize? No one knows for certain. All we have are ruins and silence. By 1178 BCE, the Hittite Empire had ceased to exist. Their cities lay empty. Their armies dissolved. Their kings forgotten. Even their language, once spoken by thousands, vanished, leaving nothing but clay tablets buried beneath the earth. For nearly 3,000 years, the world forgot them, until a few fragments of stone, unearthed in the 20th century, brought their story back to life. But their fall raises a chilling question. If an empire so strong could collapse so quickly, what does that say about the fragility of civilization itself? When the Hittite Empire fell, it didn't just collapse politically, it vanished from human memory. Unlike the Egyptians, who left pyramids, or the Babylonians, who left legends, the Hittites left almost nothing for later generations to remember them by. For nearly 3,000 years, their story was erased. Ancient writers mentioned them only in fragments, and most historians doubted they even existed. To the modern world, the Hittites were a ghost civilization, lost in the shadows of time. Then, in the early 20th century, everything changed. Archaeologists digging in the rugged hills of central Turkey uncovered something extraordinary: the ruins of Hattusa, the forgotten capital of the Hittites. Buried deep in the earth were thousands of clay tablets, inscribed in cuneiform. These tablets revealed a language unlike any other, a language that turned out to be the earliest written form of an Indo-European tongue, the linguistic ancestor of many modern languages today. Through these texts, the Hittites spoke to us across the millennia. They told of treaties, laws, royal decrees, even personal letters. These records showed us that the Hittites weren't just warriors. They were thinkers, lawmakers, and diplomats. Their laws influenced future codes. Their diplomacy, especially the Treaty of Kadesh, became a model for peace agreements centuries later. Even their cultural blending, absorbing ideas from Mesopotamia and the Levant, echoed in civilizations that followed. Today, the Hittites stand as a reminder of history's fragility, how a great power can disappear, and yet, through archaeology, speak again. The Hittites rose from the rugged hills of Anatolia to become one of the most powerful empires of the ancient world. They forged peace with pharaohs, mastered the art of war, and shaped laws that echoed through time. And yet, they vanished. Their cities turned to dust. Their language fell silent. For centuries, their name was erased from history, until a handful of broken tablets brought their story back to life. What does the fall of the Hittites teach us? That even the greatest powers can disappear, that history is fragile, and that the world we know today may one day be forgotten. If an empire as mighty as the Hittites could vanish without a trace, what does that say about our own civilization? Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. If you enjoyed uncovering the mystery of the Hittites, imagine the secrets that lie within other forgotten empires. Which lost civilization should we explore next? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories from history. Until next time, the past still whispers if you know where to listen.